Welcome back everybody, Steve in the Pinball Room. It's so good to see you. It's been so long. I've missed you. I hope you've missed these videos. I am so sorry that it's been so long since I put a video out. There's just been a lot going on. Excuses, life, kids, drama, work, whatever. But the good news is I'm back, we're back. And even better news is we are 2.5 weeks out from Expo. Today is Wednesday, the 25th, I believe, of September. Anyway, we're getting close. And the really good news is I'm gonna be at Expo. I'm so excited. I wasn't gonna be at Expo. I was gearing up for it. I thought if you guys saw me in Tacoma, Washington at the Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show, great time, loved meeting a chunk of you people there. And I committed, I said, hey, I wanna have this game done by Expo. Aaron in the audience put it out, Aaron Davis from Fast Pinball, he's like, you realize that's only like 2 or 3 months, Steve, right? I'm like, oh, you're right, I got a lot to do. And then the summer just summer happens, right? And there's so much else going on. Lots of good memories were made, good times were had. I chipped away at my pinball project, but not at all as much as I wanted to. Then I started to gear up for it all over again, and then work came through, reared its ugly head and said, no, you've got to be here that week, and so things are happening, I won't be able to drive out there, so I thought I'm not going. Started to announce to the world I'm not going to be there. And then bless his angelic, cute little shiny head, Aaron Davis from Fast Pinball, and they feature, they drive to so many pinball shows all throughout the year, to everywhere. And they have this trailer, and they're pulling machines from Tacoma, Washington, all the way to Texas. I think they've even gone out to like Georgia for Southern Fried Gaming Expo and all over the place. And up to Expo, and Aaron used to say, he said, hey Steve, we got a spot in the trailer if you want. We're gonna be coming through Salt Lake anyway. We'll pick up your machine. I'm like, we're coming through Salt Lake? They're gonna be driving for like 48 hours. They're gonna pick up my machine and take it there. So I'm gonna be able to fly in on Thursday. I'll get there sometime Thursday afternoon, hopefully in time for the media mixer. I'm trying to be there to meet the rest of you guys. Anyway, we're gonna get in there and I'll be there. My wife can't make it. But I'll be there with my machine, and I'm so excited. There's gonna be like 24, 26 homebrew pinball machines there, guys. It's gonna be insane. It's the 40th anniversary of Expo. If you guys are anywhere near, I highly encourage you. They still got tickets. Come through just for a single day, whatever. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to say hi, shake your hand, talk shop, and just there's gonna be so many people there. You'll be able to meet so many great games. I can't wait. I've never been to Expo, so I'm just more than excited and more than grateful to Aaron and Dave for willing to sacrifice and make their trip longer to come by and get my machine. I would be remiss if I didn't go through and give a huge shout out to all my Patreon followers. There's a bunch of you on Patreon that have been so patient and so diligent and have kept supporting me even through kind of the slow time. Good news is, all of you have got your name and my machine and the credits. It's gonna be there. If you're at the high enough level, we've got you some t-shirts. I'm gonna try to send out some extra swag and stickers to you guys here soon. And good news is, I've already picked the theme for my next pinball machine, so I'll tease you with that. We'll talk about it at Expo through there, and then I'll announce it here sometime soon through Patreon. We've got a very busy fall coming up. I got to prep a lot of things so I can really start cranking out machines faster. There's so many things I've learned that I need to implement better processes. That's for another video. Anyway, for today, we are going to go through and do the part 2, revisited, redux, new and improved video of how to glue the inserts into your playfield once you've got it cut and ready to go. The last video I watched it this morning. It was a year ago. Good information in there, I think. There's valuable information. I did a lot of edits and corrections on the screen, trying to fix things I was saying that weren't really quite right after I kind of learned the process better. I was totally using the wrong glue. It yellowed within like a few weeks. Anyways, today we've got a process that mirrors what I've learned from others and what I ended up doing on my last prototype playfield that I printed. Turned out really good. I continue to make adjustments and changes since then, so we've got a few modifications on this playfield to now make it final. Anyway, all that being said, I'm gonna go through and show you exactly the best process as I understand it. I'm not saying it's the only process, but it's one that has worked really well for me, and I'm excited to show it to you. Okay, so let's get through the basic things. Obviously, the materials we are needing, right? We need gloves. We're dealing with chemicals, epoxies, glues, solvents. Hopefully no solvents, but we need gloves, all right? This is not the same as the clear coat video that you may have watched, so it's not as dangerous as that. You don't need the double layer nitrile gloves. No reason not to have them. But even just basic kind of like surgical scrub gloves, these will work fine to keep our hands clear of the glue. You need your playfield, and however you want to cut it out is fine. The one thing I've learned in 4 years now working in my homebrew, really thought I'd be done in 2.5. Silly me. There's no right or wrong way in how to go about building your pinball machine. I've met so many of you now that are working on your own projects and who have gone before me. I've learned so much from all of you guys, and one of the constant lesson I learn over and over again is that there is no one correct way to build a homebrew pinball machine. Play to your strengths, okay? You hear me talk about, my CNC process and using that machine, that's because I happen to have access to it downtown here, not too far away in Salt Lake, for one of the maker spaces. So I'm using that, and it's helpful. I've seen so many amazingly beautiful, gorgeous, pristine, crisp pinball machines that have been made by hand, either cutting with a router, with Forstner bits, using 3D printed inserts, T-bow flip, to go through and like have guides for cutting the inserts. Like, there's so many different ways you can go about this to get good, precise cuts. So go with what is available and within your skill set and what you feel comfortable. Yes, you might need to stretch yourself a little bit and practice and follow some tutorials, but there's lots of ways. So don't let the cost of like a CNC machine get in the way. There's lots of different ways to go about it. Okay, that being said, play to your strengths. So we've got our play field. Mine has been cut out. You're gonna notice a lot of my inserts are going in fairly easily. I still have my holes a little bit bigger than probably what they really need to be. I actually had them tighter this time I cut. They were too tight, so I had to kind of do another round of milling. That opened up a few of them a little more than what I wanted, but we're just gonna fill that with glue. Did it last time, worked out fine. We'll cover that when we go through and do our artwork. It's all gonna be fine, okay? Things don't have to be absolutely perfect for you to be able to move ahead, okay? All right, so we've got our play field, we've got all the inserts. I've gone through and kind of set them out next to the holes they're gonna be going in, so I can just kind of shove them in place. That's not really necessary. I'll probably move some of them around as I'm going anyway, but I have them in the general sense. I wanna make sure I have every one I need so I don't forget any while my glue setting, okay? Then your gloves, as we talked about, are really important. And then of course you need glue. The next thing we think about is the glue. There are a few different options. In the last video, I showed a glue that was horrible and it yellowed within a few weeks. This time, I'm using a glue. This one was recommended by Jamie Boyd. It's been used by a number of other people I know in the hobby also, and they love it. It's a Gorilla Clear Epoxy. It's UV resistant, so it shouldn't yellow over time. It's a 2-part epoxy. You squeeze it out. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And it works great. It holds super strong. You only get about 5 minutes of working time with this one though. You have to be kind of quick, okay? And that's not bad because, just do it a section at a time. Do a couple of inserts here, clean up, move on to the next one, etc. Okay, so totally doable. The other thing to be aware of, as I've been told, I've not used this one, is if you have very tight inserts, this can kind of react with the chemicals and tend to kind of push them up a little bit while it's curing. So I've been told that the best process with this one is to go through, get a chunk of inserts in, wipe them clean, and then you need to clamp them with like some deep neck C clamps or something and clamp it down to make sure they don't, start to lift a little bit while they're curing overnight. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now, I say I'm not using that glue. The glue I'm using is the one that my wife swears by. She is super handy and craftsy and does a million gazillion things. She's gone through and made and sold hundreds of these tumblers, custom tumblers. This is one that she made for me a few years back. But she makes all sorts of tumblers and even beyond that, any other things with epoxy. And this is the brand that she's liked. She feels it's easy to work with, has a long enough time before it sets. It's very UV resistant. She's tested it. We have some tumblers she's made that have lasted for over 3 years, no yellowing whatsoever. I ended up using this one last time and I thought it worked great. So I'm using some more of this. Now, all these glues you're gonna use, they have a shelf life, so be aware of that. Okay, this one is about a year or so, they say shelf life while it's sealed. And once you open it, it's only got about 6 months. Every brand's gonna be a little bit different for how much shelf life it has. I'd have to get my glasses because I'm getting old. I'm not sure what the shelf life is on this one, but I think rule of thumb is probably no more than a year. So once you open it up, like I'll use this, I will not use very much of this. And then by the time I get around to my next play field, I don't think it's gonna be in 6 months, but there is another one coming. I've already got a theme picked out. I'll talk to you all about it here soon. Anyways, yeah, you're gonna end up having to throw it away. So you don't need like these giant jugs of resin unless you're way faster and doing something different than I am. This will be plenty for us. Okay, so we've got our glue. We've got our stirring sticks. I've got these little plastic Dixie cups that I used last year. They work great. Any sort of little disposable receptacle, you can put the glue in, stir it all up, and then like you'll be able to toss, make sure it's not gonna eat through. This plastic is not very thick, but it works fine for the epoxy. It's not a super corrosive, chemical we're using of any sort. It's more just to contain it. If you happen to use like paper plates or paper bowls, things like that, maybe double or triple layer it just to make sure it doesn't soak through over time, right? And then, I didn't show this in my last video, but I love these acid brushes. They're disposable. I think I got a pack of like 20 or 30 off Amazon for like $8 a year ago. And yeah, they're not high quality, and these the hairs will often kind of fall out. Keep an eye out for that. You might have to kind of like pick one out. Maybe have some tweezers nearby or a dry stick you can scrape it out with. But other than that, these are great because epoxy, any decent brush you put it on, you're not gonna be able to clean it and save it and use it again. So whatever you use is gonna be thrown away. So these are great disposable ones. You get a bunch of them. And you're gonna want this because what I did wrong last time, I tried to take my stick and just kind of put in some glue. I was so concerned about not making a mess and not having so much extra glue to wipe up and clean up that I didn't put in, really honestly, probably enough. Now, I've only had issues with one insert so far, but one of my inserts here at the bottom of the staircase has popped up and it's cracking through the clear and it's getting really bad. And I remembered I was particularly careful on how much glue I put on that one. I didn't want to put too much glue on it. Well, what you want to do is get a healthy amount of glue. You don't want to drown it and have like a pool inside every little hole here you're doing, right? You definitely want to get the glue on this brush and get it very thoroughly around that inner kind of recessed shelf that you have there for where your insert's going to sit. Coat it very well, okay? Another thing we need to do, I didn't talk about last time, is pointed out in the comments by Iron Spider, I believe. Thank you. But, thank you, John. All your inserts, you should go through. Doesn't take very long. You only need to do like a little bit for each insert. But I recommend you take a little bit of sandpaper, like a 180 grit, maybe 200, probably no finer than that though. And just do a quick roughing, even 80 grit would be great. You just want a quick roughing around the outside edge. Nothing very long. Let me show you how I do it. I use some of these sponges. I've got like a 180 sponge. This one I don't think I've used before. It's still on the cardboard. And I take these, I just kind of hold this or hold a block with sandpaper, whatever, and I take the insert and I just kind of go and I kind of rotate it as I do it until I feel like I've gone it around it probably 1.5 times, okay? You're gonna blow it, take a little microfiber cloth, just kind of get out the sawdust, right? Boom. You can hardly even tell the difference. I did just a little bit, but it roughens it up just a little bit. You can feel it in a few spots. That's just gonna help make sure your glue really adheres into the plastic. The wood's very porous, the wood's gonna adhere to that just great. Make sure that the epoxy, the glue you're using, will work with glue and plastic, so they will both connect. But yeah, just go through and do that each one of your inserts, okay? I didn't do it the last time. Again, I've only had issues with one insert, but it only takes one insert to ruin a play field, so make sure you have an adequate layer of glue and you've roughed up the edge of every one of these just a little bit, right? And then you're gonna put it in, okay? We're gonna put it down inside. Some glue's gonna squeeze on up out and down the bottom. That's okay. We're gonna take a paper towel, maybe a disposable cotton cloth of some sort, maybe microfiber you're willing to get rid of. Paper towels work great. You're gonna dampen either one, the cloth or the paper towel, a decent amount. Not sopping wet, okay, but just damp. And after you get that insert in, you're gonna come through and you're just gonna wipe over it. Try to do just kind of like one good hard clean wipe. You're gonna clean up that excess glue. You're still gonna see kind of the stain on the wood from the glue that's connected, or that has touched the wood. That's fine. We're gonna sand all that down anyway before we clear coat, so you won't see any sort of discoloration in any bare wood that's not covered by your artwork. It's gonna be fine, okay? I also mentioned in some of my inserts, the holes are a little bit big. Again, even if perfection is not the goal here, right? Just good enough is fine. We're gonna go through and fill any of those voids with epoxy, okay? We'll end up sanding it down, and then when you come through and do your layer of artwork, we're gonna go through in the borders of that artwork, we're gonna make sure that overlaps that seam. So every little circle in my artwork is gonna be just a little bit smaller by about 2 millimeters than the actual insert is. So that way it overlaps a little bit, okay? So any little void around the outside is gonna be covered by the edge of that artwork, okay? If there's any area that's not covered by the edge of your artwork, still just a little bit of clear. As long as it's not like egregious or huge, not really much you're gonna see because the epoxy is very smooth like glass. Once you hit it, once you hit it with the clear coat, it makes it look like glass. If anything, you'll just kind of see the wood through it. So decide for yourself, but don't worry about it if you have some small little void next to an insert. Oh, I've got to create a whole new play field. No, you'll be fine, okay? We'll cover that up with the artwork. All right, that really is pretty much the process, guys. I think it was less than 28 minutes, right? I can go through now, I'll put some in, and we'll kind of time lapse and kind of see how I go about it, but I mean, picture's worth 1,000 words, but I already gave you like 10,000 words, right? I talk so fast. So anyway, that's the process. I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna get all mine in, I'm gonna wipe it up, clean it up. I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. You'll see how there's still some, stain of the glue, no big deal. We'll let it cure overnight, a full 24 hours. We'll come back tomorrow, we'll continue, still try to keep the video under 28 minutes, and we're gonna talk about the sanding process. There's a couple different methods that I found. One that I really love, they both work great. One's more expensive than the other, but both are great options, okay? And we'll talk about that and kind of the final things we need to go through and do to prep it for clear coat, which will be the next step. All right, guys, okay. So if you're following along, now is the time to get your gloves on and we're gonna start playing with glue. let's do this one right here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Actually, it's going to be this one right here from where the camera is. This one's got a bit of a void to fill. So you can kind of get an idea how much glue I'm putting on. Like, I don't really like it like ripping a ton. There we go. And then, I kind of put it down, I kind of lift up and kind of scrape up along the edge. And then I go through with the acid brush and make sure it's down all the way in there. Okay. Then I'm gonna slide in my insert. This one's got some big voids. You might be able to see on each side, top and bottom. It's got some pretty decent voids there. So I'm gonna go through and put some more, fill that void. Okay. And then with the really wet cloth, wipe up the excess there. Okay. And now we can kind of scooch a little bit if we want to in there. Move it up or down, in the center a little bit. We've got a lot of play in that one. For this one, just to make sure it's filled, I'm gonna get a lot of glue. My brush, just kind of put down some dabs there. Okay. And now with the clean brush, I'm going to just kind of like smooth that a little bit. Okay. And this one now, I'm not going to wipe again with a paper towel because it tends to pick it up and kind of pull it out of the void. Okay. I want to make sure that void is filled, so I'm just going to leave a little bit extra. But I know that we're going to take care of that as we go through and sand the playfield. All right, a couple of things I thought of as I was going through and doing that. One, as soon as you're done, make sure you pick this thing up, okay? And take that wet paper towel and wipe up with the excess glue that will come through underneath. Now it's the underside of the playfield, but we want everything to look as good as we can, right? So let's just go through, because why not? And kind of make sure we get rid of this excess. Roll it over. And then once you've done this, have some place where you can set this. Okay? Alright, so I'm just putting it here on my sawhorses. Notice I have the door open for ventilation. Okay, let's make sure we have some ventilation. Alright, I'll see you in 24 hours. Alright, here we are 24 hours later. Everything is cured up and is ready to be sanded. A couple of things before we get into that I want to clarify that I don't think I really quite hit clearly enough when I was talking about the process to go through and glue these. Okay, two things. One, if you do end up having a bigger gap around your insert, you're going to want to go through and actually do multiple applications of epoxy to help fill that gap. For example, when I was going through here, I've got a pretty good gap around one edge of a couple of these inserts here, a couple of these. And so I went through and I glued them in place, let it cure for about 12 hours or so, and then came back out and I applied a little bit more in those gaps because as it cures, with gravity and everything, the way I've got it sitting, it starts to just kind of sink down, okay? And some of it kind of comes through and you end up with these little voids again, okay? And if they're sizable enough, we want to fill this up before we do the clear coat. Clear coat you can use to fill up really small voids like that, but if there's a decent void where you can really get like a fine flathead screwdriver in there still, or like a really thick, thumbnail can still go down in there, you can feel it pretty obviously. You want to try to fill that with epoxy, okay, before we start sanding and doing the clear coat. Clear coat will really just fill very, very small voids, okay? Probably gonna fill bigger ones, but it's gonna take longer than like your epoxy or glue. Your epoxy and your glue is thicker, is gonna fill that up easier. So after it's about halfway through drying, come back through and put just a little bit more in those voids, let it sit, check again about another 12 hours. It may have kind of gone through, might need to do it again. 12 hours, it again depends on the glue, okay? For the Gorilla Glue, maybe within about 10-15 minutes you can come back through and reapply. It starts to set up faster. For the epoxy I'm using, it takes 24 hours to cure. About halfway through that, it's gotten pretty, it's cured well enough that it's not really moving anymore. So then you can fill a little bit more in. It'll kind of fill up on top of where the bottom was, etc. You might need to do that a few different times until you get that void filled up at least 90% of the way, if not really all the way there, before you start to sand and then go through and do all your clear coat. Okay, so pay attention to that. The other thing I want to talk about are these star rollover inserts. These also you need to be really careful with because we do not want to get glue inside the portion of this insert where the star is going to go. Now each of them come with a clear little plastic filler, star-shaped filler, okay, that goes inside that insert, okay? And that's useful, one, just to make sure like it doesn't get broken in transit or anything else like that, right? And the shape stays fit. But when you're going through doing your epoxy, you're gonna have that in, okay? You're gonna sand the edges, you're gonna glue the whole edge, you're gonna put it in there, and within just a couple of minutes, pretty much right away is what I do. I'll have like a flathead screwdriver, okay? And I'll be able to kind of like hold that insert in place to make sure it doesn't come out since everything's still wet. And then I'll push from behind and I'll pull this out, okay? As you go through and are doing the glue on these ones, you really want to make sure you don't get glue over the top, okay? Because that's just gonna either hold this piece in place, you don't pull it out right away, or even so, it's gonna get down inside and it's gonna kind of gum that up. And then when you put the actual plastic star that's kind of like convex, right, that the ball is gonna roll over, that's just gonna get hung up there and stick, and it's not gonna actually move up and down nice and freely like you need to trigger the leaf switch underneath, right? All that's to say, just be very careful. Make sure you only get glue around the outside edge. If you happen to have a void on one of these, you're gonna need to take your acid brush. You need to very, very carefully go through and put the glue just on kind of the fat end of that pie wedge shape at the edge of these inserts. Like, make sure you don't get glue down in the cracks. That's all I'm really saying in very long, complicated sentences. Do everything you can to avoid getting glue down inside those cracks. What happens if you do? If you do, you're gonna need to wait for it, well, either go through and try to wipe it up right away, right after you did it immediately, and get some flush and water through there, do what you can to try to get it out. If it's really bad, you might need to push the insert out, wipe it clean, grab another insert, start all over again, okay? If there's just a little bit that kind of gets through there, when it's all the way cured, come through with an X-Acto knife or razor blade, and you need to go through and just kind of scrape and carve out those things until this star piece of plastic came with it will go down in and out pretty easily, okay? You can also grab the actual star rollover shape, that final piece, right? And put it in some, but those ones you can't really put in all the way without snapping them in place. And getting them back out, you're gonna probably bust the pieces of plastic on the bottom side. So I prefer just to mess with this. As long as this slides up and down, in and out pretty easily, then you should have had it. You should have been, that should mean you've gotten it clean enough, okay, that you're good enough. But yeah, X-Acto knife, razor blade, get the glue out of those little cracks, or else it's just, things aren't gonna work, okay? There's very low tolerance on that type of switch to make sure it actually works consistently for you when you're in your gameplay. All right, so sanding. Now there's two different ways I've talked about to go about sanding. There's multiple ways, okay, but there's two ways that I found that I prefer that work well. One is kind of the poor layman's way. It's going through and just using some block sanding, right? Getting a piece of 2x4 or a big piece of wood, wrapping some sandpaper around it, and sanding, and just with your hand. And it's gonna take a while. This glue, you're gonna wanna start with like a 180, nothing higher than a 200, probably, yeah, like a 180 or 120 even sand grit, just something pretty low and rough to get this glue off, all right? And any inserts you have that are sitting up a little bit proud, you're gonna need to sand those down flat. And it's gonna take a while, a lot of elbow grease. What I recommend is a long board sander like this for about 20 bucks off Amazon. It comes with these cool rolls of sandpaper. I mentioned this in my last video from a year ago. I've got from 220 to 400 to 800, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000. Now most of this is going to be for the clear sanding, or for the clear coat wet sanding, right? For right now, you can dry sand with like a 220 or a 180. And the reason we do a long board or block sander is you want to make sure you're sanding in even strokes that don't end up creating any sort of like little divots or concave areas in your playfield, right? If you use an orbital sander, those are great. They don't take as much, of your back into it, have much shoulder work and all that. It's easier for us physically as humans, right? But you're also way more prone to be a little bit uneven in how much pressure you put down. It's going so fast, you are much more likely to get some concave or uneven spots, and your playfield's not going to be perfectly level. And if you've gone through and gotten really gorgeous, expensive 9-ply birch plywood, or even higher ply, I forget how many plies this is, you don't want to ruin that wood by getting these low spots in, right? So unless you're some orbital sander pro and you are confident you can use that thing and keep it super even, I'd stay away from it. You get a long board like this, some sort of box sander where you can go through and, I mean, this thing, it's like 18 inches. It pretty much almost covers the whole width of the playfield here, right? And so you can feel pretty confident what you're doing is not creating a low spot. Like, you know, don't get down here on the edge, right? You've got to stay flat, got to stay even. You can push from the back and from the front, which is what I like about it. And you go through and you just sand and sand and sand. And yeah, it's gonna take a while, okay, to get through this glue, especially if you've been a little bit sloppier like I have and got lots here on the wood. It's gonna take a while to get through it all. So that's one method. It's a great method, it just takes time. Another method, much more expensive, but really awesome. The answer is a drum sander. By far my preferred method of doing this whole process. I don't have one, but I've got a buddy who's got one in his wood shop, as you saw, so I have access to it. If you can find someone who has a drum sander, has access to one, go through and do it. It's so fast, it's so smooth, and there's no better way to make sure you have a completely level, even surface that doesn't go down and start to eat through your plywood veneer at any point. If you can't, I get it, they're not easy to come by, they're expensive. Boy, one day I'd like to have one if I even have room for it. You can do the longboard process, right? You'll get there. It takes a little bit longer, you'll get there, okay? And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the primary, I think, most important step through all these processes are just taking your time, doing it thoroughly, not cutting corners, being patient, realizing, you know, maybe I need to put down another little layer of glue because some of it's sunk in a corner, so I got a little bit of a void. Come back, fill it, just take your time, it'll be worth it. Do it right first time. Yeah. Next step is one of my favorite. It's going through and get the artwork on and then applying the clear coat, which is kind of a pain, but man, things just look so good. The colors start to pop. All these dusty inserts, once you rub it down with some naphtha and start getting the clear coat down, they just come back to life like glass and your light shine through and everything's just amazing. Okay, for those of you who have done this more than I have, because I'm still new and green, this is my preferred method that's working out and giving me good results. Maybe you have better ideas, maybe you have a better process, please share. Don't keep it to yourself. Put it down in the comments. Everybody else can learn from it, and together we'll all be making better pinball machines. At the end of the day, the community is the most important part, right? Just for the fun we have and for being able to share and give and contribute knowledge and ideas and, you know, good vibes, all that kind of good stuff, okay? I'm sorry there haven't been so many videos. I had kind of a slump on things. I'm going to try to get back into it, especially come spring when I start my next project. I've already got the theme figured out, got some amazing ideas down on paper. It's going to be a project that's going to be fun. We're going to play more with magnets and a lot more interactive toys and things. Hopefully it will not ruin the flow of the pinball machine. I'm trying to make sure it won't. Anyway, more to come on that. So thank you for hanging strong. Huge, huge shout out to all my Patreon followers who are still contributing and supporting me. Thank you so much, guys. If it weren't for you, Expo wouldn't be as possible as it is either. Again, I'm excited to meet all you guys. If you haven't started making your own pinball machine yet, why not? There's never been a better time. There's never been more help. Just get off your butt and do it. Yes, it's work, it's some money, but man, it's so great. Bless my dear wife for supporting me, letting me do this, because I just love it. All right, everybody. Again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.